compliance. You will feel no pain anymore, no more defiance. Just give us your compliance.
Hey, it is Larry Sharp here on the Sharp Way Show. It's a little bit past 6 p.m. on the East Coast. A little bit early today, I know, but at least I showed up. See, better early than not at all, or whatever that saying is. Happy that you've given me a chunk of your evening. Going to be talking a little bit about the midterms with someone who I think is a really very savvy kind of Republican strategist. Maybe that's not the right word, but I feel like he is. He's kind of an influencer. There we go. That's a better word. We'll call him an influencer. And if you like, you know it's going to be a good show. So instead of even imagining, just realize it's going to be a good show. Do me a favor, like and comment and share. Do the stuff you're supposed to do. Click those buttons. You're supposed to do it. Please do that. It does matter. If you're watching on YouTube, then please subscribe. You know it does matter. But I'm going to bring in someone to chat about that. A guy I know, he's been on my show before. He is a columnist for Newsmax, townhall.com, and the DC Examiner. He's also the GOP chair of the Cook County GOP in Tennessee. The man himself, Kenny Cody. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Larry. Thanks for having me on, brother.
No, of course. I'm glad. For those of you who want to see what he's doing, no worries. Head over to Twitter to KDCODYTN over at Twitter. Check out what he's doing. The link is in the description. Look, if you're a GOP guy, and you are, I'm assuming you were either surprised or saddened or something, some emotion from the red wave that was supposed to come, that didn't come. And am I off on this, or did you expect this?
Didn't expect it at all. If you would have asked me 2 months ago or 3 months ago, and this would have been the result, I think I probably would have expected it, because the polls were kind of saying the same thing. 538 had a 20% for the GOP to take the Senate, 80% the House, but with few gains. But with the momentum of polls, with the momentum of many candidates, kind of getting closer in polling, you had Blake Masters, Dr. Oz, those who would take a lead in polling. And I know polling doesn't mean a lot to some people, but it still means a lot to us, especially in terms of fundraising and people having more confidence in a candidate. So I definitely wasn't expecting it the month or the weekend that it happened. And yeah, I was very disappointed. It absolutely sucks. I mean, I'm glad that we're going to have about a 9-seat majority in the House. That's a great thing to have. That's a majority in either House of Congress is a good thing for the Republican Party. But basically losing a Senate seat when you're going below the current threshold of 50, and you have to even keep the status quo, you have to win in December. It sucks, and that's right. About the only word I can use to describe it.
So if you look at that, obviously, if Democrats are going to say, "Hey, you Republicans, you screwed up with your abortion issue," right? It's all about abortion. That was the reason for it, and you guys messed up. How do you take that? Is that true? Not true? Do you think it's just them being upset? Do you think that was part of the reason, or was it the big reason, or nothing?
I don't think it had too much of an impact, if I'm being quite honest. If you look at these governors who won their races by 20 points or more, you look at the Vermont's governor, you look at Mike DeWine, you look at Phil Scott, moderate, I guess if you want to put on quotations around it, governors in their states, they have signed heartbeat bills, they have signed strict abortion bans in their states, and they've won 15 or 20 points or more. Even in Vermont, that happens. So, you're talking about these sort of GOP governors who, DeSantis in Florida, you have Bill Lee in Tennessee, you have McMaster. You didn't really see any GOP upsets in terms of, incumbents getting beat for the laws they had signed on abortion. You didn't see a lot of Republicans who were incumbents getting beat for their views on abortion. Maybe you had some candidates who were running in swing districts that might have affected, but overall, to me, I don't think the abortion issue meant that much, and that showed up in exit polling. Just pure issue polling, inflation, immigration, all these issues were polling above abortion, and I think Democrats were sort of relying on this idea that it was going to be the number one issue for swing voters, and it wasn't hardly even in the top 3 oftentimes in exit polling. So while it had a somewhat of an impact, I think it encouraged definitely the youth to vote, the 18 to 30 age gap. I think that definitely encouraged them to vote, and that it did affect in some swing areas. But overall, I don't think it was the sole factor that a lot of Democrats are making it out to be.
There's a theory, and I don't know this to be true, that when it comes to voting for executives, we very often vote for the person. Right. So the governor, the mayor, right. That type of thing. Right. We vote for the person. But when it comes to the legislature, Congress, Senate, we don't. We vote for the party. Now, again, I don't know if that's true. I heard someone talking about that. How does that make you feel? You think that's on the money, not in the money? Doesn't matter?
I think it's pretty. I think it's pretty accurate. I think it depends. I mean, of course, it depends is always the answer to about any political question that can get asked. I mean, I think that a lot of the time, like with these candidates, like, Oz in Pennsylvania, Masters in Arizona. I mean, if you even want to talk Bolduc in New Hampshire, I think that is voting purely for the party. I think when you have your candidates who are not polling well against, strong Democrats or incumbent Democrats, you're voting for the party then, especially if you're voting like a party line. It's the reason Mastriano dragged Dr. Oz down in Pennsylvania. But then again, you have the person, right? Again, when you talk about DeWine in Ohio, you can talk about Phil Scott in Vermont. You can talk about Sununu in New Hampshire. I mean, Republicans in blue states or kind of swing states, the people are voting for the person at that point. I think that they've done a good job as governor. They're on the television all the time. They're talking to their constituents. They have good constituent service. So I think oftentimes you have to be more of voting for the person in a swing state, or if you're the opposite party in a strong blue or red stronghold. Right. So I think that oftentimes you have to appeal to the person more than you appeal to the party. But like you said, when it comes to the House and the Senate on a federal basis, I think that oftentimes, at least more over than governorships or with the gubernatorial races or House or state legislative races, I think you're going to see a lot more of the party line on the federal level than you see at the state level.
Okay. Dave brings up, he says, a Republican was elected governor in Vermont, but abortion was also legalized. Rand Paul won in Kentucky, but an abortion ban also failed in Kentucky. Right. So with that in mind, does this validate your idea that abortion wasn't that big of a deal, or does it not?
I think it kind of washes. I think that, like in Kentucky amendments, especially, and constitutional amendments, you look at Kansas and if you look at Kentucky, a lot of these amendments, when they're put on the dais, like it's hard to pass things unless you put it in layman's terms, right? Like we had 4 clear amendments passed here in Tennessee, resoundingly. We had slavery to get taken out of the Constitution. We had a right to work amendment. We had allowing ministers and preachers who are paid to preach and paid to minister out to get allowed to run for state legislative here. So you have these amendments that are, in Kentucky and in Vermont that are probably written better. So it's again, it's on it depends basis. But yeah, I mostly agree with that comment. I think it's kind of 50-50. I think it may have it's like maybe 55, 40, 45, somewhere in there where it affected. I'm sure it did affect, right? Like it did affect the midterm elections. The resounding effect that I think Democrats thought it would be, and the reason that the opinion was leaked was to destroy Republican midterm chances. I think that idea is not as relied on in basis because I just don't think it was that impactful. Was it impactful? Yes. Was it the sole motivating factor? I don't think so.
Well, the funny thing is, right, I look at many people in my city. I live in New York City, obviously, and very heavily Democratic city. We're probably 7-1 now. I think we were 6-1. I think now we're about 7-1 Democrat to Republican. It's about 3.1, give or take, about 3.1 million, 3.2 million registered Democrats in New York City, and about 500,000 registered Republicans in New York City. Right. So it's a very heavy Democratic city. However, there are some people who do lean right and will vote Republican. But in a Democratic city like mine, when when Roe was struck down, a lot of those women who I know were considering voting Republican went, nope, vote Democrat. So I feel like I don't think like the abortion strike, I don't think it like made less Republicans vote Democrat. But I do think some Democrats who were considering voting Republican, particularly women, I think a lot of them went, no, I'm going back Democrat. That's what my gut tells me. I have no data on this. No data. This is only what my feeling says. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's always been the concern with the abortion issue. It was always suburban women, suburban and white women especially, that were always really in concerns about the Republican approval that they have on handling the issue of abortion. They think most state legislatures, most governors are men, that men should not be making decisions for women on the issue at all. So I think, especially just in terms of issue polling the last 20 years, I mean, just look at the approval rating when it comes to Republicans on handling abortion. Now, Republicans Republicans are heavily favored in bad economies to handle the economy, right? They're usually favored to handle immigration. Democrats are usually, side with to handle health care, and Democrats are usually sided with to handle abortion. So
Sure.
I think that's a true thing. And I think when any abortion law happens, whether it's a statewide abortion law, even if it's just a regional abortion law, and even if it's a federal issue like being left up to states, I think also New York women probably cared a lot more about it because now it's up to state law, and now it's up to their own states to decide what happens to abortion, and they would rather put it in the hands of Democrats, at least that issue alone, in the hands of Democrats, because now they're not protected by the federal government to handle the issue
Right.
anymore.
Well,
So they
Daniel
were
brings this
voting
up
for
too.
Democrats.
Daniel says, to your point, the Supreme Court of the United States put that abortion issue back to the decision of states.
Yep.
But my point is, and for those who don't live in New York, abortion rights are already codified in New York State. Like, they're going nowhere, right? Nothing is going to change in New York State already. But New York women, they were upset. And Daniel, to your point, this is to Daniel's point, they didn't see what you just said.
Right.
What they heard was, oh my God, you're outlawing abortion.
Yep.
Now, that's not what happened. I'm agreeing with Daniel that is not what happened. What I'm saying, though, is that's what so many women heard. They heard, oh my God, you hate women. Oh my God, you're outlawing abortion. I think they heard that, even though it wasn't true. And I got to tell you, the Republicans did not do a good job in messaging on this. They, when it came to messaging, the Republicans failed horribly on this one. And the Democrats were masterful. Democrats acted like everyone's going to force your 11-year-old daughter to have a baby. That was their messaging, and it landed. And the Republicans just went, oh, yay, yay. Yeah. And that was, the Republicans were so busy celebrating, they didn't bother messaging. Yeah. And I think it hurt them.
I do too. And, I think is perfect example. Another, Blake Masters. He was for an all-abortion ban during his primary, and that was to get to the top of the Republican ticket. Right? He was endorsed by Donald Trump. He was trying to see him as a more far right in order to get Trump's endorsement, in order to get the MAGA base behind him. And then the general election, he has to turn around and say, "Well, I'm not for a federal abortion ban. I'm instead past the third trimester. I'm against abortion past the third trimester." So when you have to change that messaging mid-campaign, that also hurts you with suburban women. And I think it depends on messaging as well, right? Like Lee Zeldin certainly didn't drag down the Republican ticket in New York. I mean, he basically dragged Republicans across the finish line in many congressional races because of the strong campaign that he ran. Right?
No. Oh no, I was here for that. No, people. That's the story he's telling, which is an amazing story. Lee tells a great story, but that's not true. What happened in New York State was redistricting.
Sure.
That's the key. You go back to the old districting. Lee's campaign was literally this: more cops. That was his campaign. So I have a problem with my business, more cops. I have a problem with my family, more cops. I have a problem with my education, more cops. That was his entire. Literally, he's a prosecutor, and he literally had a cop. I'm not joking. A cop as lieutenant governor.
Sure.
So that was not it. That it was an aggressive campaign. Yes. It spent 3 times as much money as the last guy. Yes, but it was not a great campaign. It was a more cops campaign. My argument here for the reason why Republicans didn't have the best red wave was, if you look if you're a Democrat, you look back to Obama with almost like so amazing, right? Because he had the hope and change.
Sure.
If you're a Republican, look back at Trump, his first run. He had Make America Great Again. There was a positive message, whether you were right or left. This year, I didn't see a positive message out of anybody. All I saw was the other guy is going to kill you and destroy your family if you don't vote for me.
Sure.
And I think I could say that for Democrat or Republican.
Yeah.
And I think Lee Zeldin could have done better if he actually had a positive message. He did not. His message was, everyone's going to kill you. You got to have cops. Kathy Hochul's bad. He did well. Better, I should say, because Kathy Hochul is a terrible governor and has no charisma. Now, Cuomo was a bad governor too, but Cuomo has charisma. Sure. Hochul has none.
Definitely. And, I think Zeldin is, especially with his messaging, I don't think, just my own personal opinion, I'm a strategist and I've worked on campaigns, I don't think he ever thought he was going to win. And I think his messaging helped. And my point, moreover, and I don't think his ever goal was to win. I think he knew the situation a lot of these congressional people and these congressional members were in. They knew they could win these toss-up districts, and the issues that he ran on, like making crime the number one issue, were not necessarily the issues he was going to win on, but he knew in these swing districts that were newly formed and newly drawn that these other candidates could win on these issues.
Oh, I see your point. Okay.
And that's what,
Okay, he had a good campaign for them.
Exactly. To me, he was a sacrificial lamb because he gave up his congressional seat. These are people who were going to win in these districts if they had the right messaging. And I think with issue polling and with exit polling, I think they did enough research. That's why so much money was put into his campaign, was not necessarily how can Lee Zeldin win. It's not that. It's how can I be the New York Republican leader to carry a lot of these newly drawn swing districts over the finish line. He knew that crime and inflation were the two issues that could drag these congressional people over the finish line. And I think now it's why you're seeing a lot of people argue for him as RNC chair, because he is willing to form this messaging around better than Ron McDaniel could. And I'm honest. I mean, I think that when you're talking about somebody who has oversaw 5 elections the last few years, and we can get into this or we can. I've got a piece coming out Wednesday if we just want to read and move on. But the reason that Zeldin's being advocated for as RNC chair is because he knew the battles he could win. He knew that he could put himself up as a sacrificial lamb, sacrifice his congressional seats solely to make sure that, and even along with Ron DeSantis, that the Republicans got majority in the House. Now, is that good? Is that bad? That's debatable. But in terms of pure strategy, it's what helped the GOP get over the finish line because he knew what mattered in these swing districts. And I think that was a wise decision.
I have an ethical issue with this, right? I'm not, if this is true, that makes sense to me, right? So what you're saying does make sense to me. If that's true, I get it. But my worry is, then why lie?
Sure.
Right? Instead say, guys, you got to support me because this is how we win the House.
Sure.
And I think you might have got more Republicans to actually believe that could have worked. I think you might have gotten more because that would have been, I can accept that as true. Right? Oh, yeah. I could accept that as true. That if we do this and we get these, we could actually win the House. I feel like that was a better one, but that's not what he said at all. What Zeldin said is losing's not an option. I'm going to win. I'm going to win. I'm going to win. And you could say, well, Larry, he said that, because this. I mean, yes, but then I could have said I'm going to win too.
Sure.
I wasn't going to win in 2018, nor was I going to win in 2022. And I didn't say I was going to win. Well, that's not true. Up front, when I first talked, I said I could win because I didn't know yet.
Right.
Then when I saw the landscape, I said, okay, I'm not going to win. So then that's why I didn't go around saying I'm going to win. Right.
Right.
Who knows? And maybe, logically, maybe I should have lied and said, no, I'm going to win. But I feel like that's unethical. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on that one. I get what you're saying. I don't like that idea because now if he becomes the RNC chair, is he going to be blowing smoke again? And is it okay or is it not okay? Are we saying it's okay to blow smoke?
I think as RNC chair, it's a requirement. I think if you're a chair of any, I hate to say
I love it.
But I mean, if you're, as a GOP chair, I'm not going to say that I lie. I definitely don't. But when somebody comes up to me and I just being perfectly honest, during the Republican primary, when I can support no one, and I have to tell people, I hope you vote for me. I'm like, oh, you got it, brother. I can't tell them I'm definitely not going to vote for you because at that point it looks like I am advocating for somebody else. It looks like that I am propping up another candidate or I'm working against them. You kind of have to be, unfortunately, political in that regard. Like you have to say, yeah, you got it. I think you're doing great. I keep on doing what you're doing. But I don't really mean any of that. Like, if I was being completely honest, I would go, well, you're going to get beat to death and this guy's going to win. But I'm not going to tell my own Republican candidates that because I want them spreading the Republican message. I want them out there gunning for Republican, nominations and seats and candidacies and general elections and everything else, going against independents. We don't have to worry about Democrats that much here, to be quite honest. It's mostly just independents we worry about. But I can't tell
I got you. I'm the opposite here in New York City. I got you completely. Right.
Yes. Exactly. So, I think RNC chair itself, being the head of any party is, oftentimes a thankless job, and it's definitely not the most ethical job, but it's necessary ultimately. And I think that's where Zeldin would be good, is that he knows the battles that can be won, and he knows how to message in those battles. And that's the reason for me saying I think he would be successful, is because
Well, it's funny
unfortunately
you say that.
what has to be done.
In the GOP, to have a chair from New York would actually be pretty interesting. I mean,
Amazing.
that would be interesting,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah, that's true. You would
Absolutely.
expect, oh no, it's going to come from Tennessee or Kentucky, Arkansas,
Yes.
whatever. You wouldn't
Florida,
expect
whatever.
it from New York. So that kind of would be interesting. I agree with you on that one. I don't know if Zeldin will be any good. He needs a job now, so
yeah. He's either going to be a contributor somewhere, or he's going to be the RNC chairman. I think he's pretty well set either way. I wish I was in his shoes to be courted, but anyway.
I know the feeling 100%. I had a feeling that was going to be true. So let me move on to the other piece, which I think a lot of people, I think we saw this after the 2020 election, and I think we're going to be seeing it again after 2022. With Democrats doing better than expected, they kind of united against the evil Trump, right? One thing that will always get Democrats together is Trump is evil, Trump's bad. You will always get Democrats who go on board against the evil orange man, guaranteed. But the problem I think we find, though, is also that now what most people would call more fringe left, in my city, it's not that fringe, but outside of New York City, the more fringe left, that now they believe that they're more mainstream because you didn't reject me. See, you voted for the Democrats. See, therefore you accept whatever more fringe left, however you might define that. That's now okay. That's now the norm. So be quiet and accept my fringe left. My worry is, and I see it here for them, is that they think that people love them when they don't. And that's going to hurt if there's a backlash. Am I wrong on this?
No, not at all. Not at all. I went on a guy named Brian Nichols' show. You may actually know Brian. I'm
I know.
one of Brian's really good friends. Me and him talked about this on his podcast the other day. I think Democrats benefited from Joe Biden not being on the ballot. Because I believe that a lot of the time the executive gets blamed for the bad things happening around,
Yes.
and a lot of state and federal officials don't have that blame put on them. And I think in that same fashion, I think Republicans struggle because Trump wasn't on the ballot. And I know how strange that sounds, especially to a lot of like and never Trump people, but you have to think about his successes in 2020 and 2016 in comparison to his successes in 2018 and 2022, the midterms, right?
Okay.
When he endorsed in 2016, when he endorsed all these candidates across the board, in 2020 the same way. I mean, the Democrats had a overwhelming majority in 2018 when they won. It got dented, and a big portion of that majority got dented out in 2020 because Trump was on the ballot. We took back the House and the Senate unexpectedly when Trump was on the ballot in 2016. When you have such a cult of personality running as your main guy, and that same guy is endorsing candidates when he's not on the ballot, he's endorsing the people that are like him but aren't him. Right? You're from J.D. Vance, Blake Masters, Dr. Oz, these people who really had really low approval ratings in their states, right? Because they're endorsed by Trump, they're Trump people, but Trump voters aren't coming out to vote for them because he is not on the ballot. That's true in any election. It's why Obama failed in 2010. When he is not on the ballot, when Obama went and campaigned for senators, for Congress people, when he needed a Democratic Congress to make sure that his policy got in, he couldn't do it because he was not on the ballot. When the parties follow cults of personality, period. Both of our parties do. Trump is ours. Obama was theirs. They still haven't found their Obama. They just voted for Joe Biden because it was against our cult of personality, right? But when you don't have that on the ballot, when you have Trump people running without Trump, you fail. And when you have Trump on the ballot, you succeed. And not just Trump, you can put any cult personality blank space and then succeed or fail. When you're not on the ballot and your party is controlled by somebody who is as polarizing, not only to Democrats, but to Republicans. I mean, there's a lot of Republicans that literally would go and vote for Trump in 2024 that refuse to vote in this election because their guy is not on the ballot, period, the end. So in my opinion, Democrats struggle just as much. Republicans struggle just as much as not having their guy on the ballot as the Democrats benefited from not having theirs.
But okay, you're going like directly against what like most people are saying, right?
Mhm.
I'm not saying you're wrong, but
Yep.
you're going against what most people are saying. Most people are saying Trump's the reason, right? It's all Trump's fault. If he had just shut up, Republicans could have won. It's Trump's fault. He shouldn't have put Masters on, or he shouldn't have put, Lake on. He should have walked away and let the moderate Republican walk in, and then the moderate Republican wins. See, it happened in Virginia. See, it happened in Ohio. So they're saying exactly the opposite.
And they are, and I think they're and here is my concession to that. I think Trump could have endorsed better people. Absolutely, there's a lot of races like in Masters' race, he could have endorsed Brnovich. He could have in Oz's race, he could have endorsed McCormick, and I think both of those people would have had a better chance of winning. Mastriano was not the best candidate in Pennsylvania. Could have endorsed Barletta. Absolutely, Trump could have made better decisions, and I'm willing to concede that if he made those better decisions, we would have likely took back a few more seats. In that same reality, though, across the board, nationwide, in the House and the Senate, he's not the reason Bolduc lost New Hampshire. Bolduc lost New Hampshire by 12 points. He wasn't the reason Tiffany Smiley, who was a great candidate in Washington, lost by 12 points. Joe O'Dea was a pro-choice Republican running in the state of Colorado and got beat worse than the guy in New York, Pinion, got beat by Chuck Schumer in New York State. So to sit here and to a lot of pundits to sit here and say this is all Donald Trump's fault, I point to Joe O'Dea and say, explain that, because you can't. And if you look at the comparisons in 2018 and 2020 and 2016 to now, 2018, 22 and 2, they match up. Weak performances, Trump not on the ballot. And again, this isn't about Trump. This is about cults of personality being at the top of the ballot. Sure. And then 2016, 2020. Now, a lot of people look at 2020 and go, well, he lost the presidency. Okay, he lost the presidency, and we lost 2 Senate seats. Got it. Look at November 8th in comparison to the same election 2018. We made such big jumps with women, with Hispanics, with Asians, with minorities, and even with the youth voters in 2020. I wrote an article for Daily Wire talking about these successes and talking about how these Trump-endorsed candidates did so well. Did Trump himself do well? No. But the candidates that he endorsed because he was on the ballot basically carried them over the finish line in these thresholds because they were running alongside somebody who was a cult of personality. Now, the universal mail-in voting encouraged Democratic turnout, and was there much more of a Democratic turnout because of these laws were passed in swing states to allow universal mail-in voting? And did that impact, and did COVID impact Trump's approval rating and impact Democratic turnout? Absolutely, all those things are true. Sure. But if you want to look at just people who are endorsed by Trump, people who are endorsed by a cult of personality and their performances when they are aligned, the guy that endorsed them are on the same ballot as the candidate themselves, they succeed. And when they're not, they don't. This is a simple political analysis that nobody is refusing to do. Everybody is just like, okay, blame the main guy. Blame the same guy that we've blamed for 6 years.
It is easy.
Going wrong. It's very easy. Absolutely.
He's
doing MAGA rallies, okay, every week. And he announced 2 weeks after the midterm before the Georgia runoff, okay. Yes, he is a very easy target, but I don't know when people are not going to learn that it doesn't work. Like blaming this dude for every single failure, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, it doesn't do anything. And if you actually look at the numbers and if you actually do a really in-depth analysis of what has happened, it turns out okay. Some of his fault, sure. Endorse better candidates, Trump. Please stop endorsing the Dr. Oz's of the world. Okay, I'm willing to admit that. Yeah. But to lay the entire blame on this dude while not, kind of shading yourself away. Well, Joe O'Dea, hiding yourself away from these candidates who are anti-Trump or not the people that Trump wanted, that did bad in these races. Just do a comparative analysis, do a cost-benefit analysis of what happened, and I promise you're going to get a different outcome and a better analysis.
Let me grab a couple comments. Joseph says, it's beyond disappointing in New York that with all the crime and with all the high taxes, that more people didn't care enough to actually go to the polling place and vote, because if there was closer to 100% voter turnout, you could have had more Republicans win some seats. It's very disappointing that this is the picture of New York for the next 4 years. Joseph's right, and this is data you may not know, Kenny. In New York State, we actually had 500,000 less voters than we had in 2018, with 2 million more registered voters. So we actually had lower turnout. Joseph's right. We had less turnout this time than we had before. And I think it is disappointing. I wanted more people to show up, but New Yorkers, I think a lot of them just go, why bother? Like, why bother? It's a valid point. Do you have that? I know Tennessee is much more of a red state than a blue state. Do you have the same kind of apathy? Like, why bother? The red team's always going to win. We have that here. Yeah. We know who's going to win. We do why bother?
It was actually the opposite here. And, like we had, even in this year, so like in May and August, we actually had elections like for the county primary in May for like for those who are getting nominated for Republican seats. We've had 3 elections this year, ironically enough. We had a May Republican primary for county seats, had an August primary for state and federal seats, and then, of course, the November 8th general election. And we actually had more turnout for the general election than we had in either of the other primary dates. So it's much larger of a turnout, probably aligned along the lines of, I think, 2010. So we had a very high turnout here. But I understand but I think that's a lot of apathy, right? Like when you are enjoying your governance, like in Tennessee, we enjoy our governance. We enjoy our governor. Our governor won more than he did in 2018. The state legislature is a super majority, has 75 seats of Republicans in the House and a majority in the Tennessee State Senate. Constitutional amendments were passed resoundingly. Republican-backed constitutional amendments passed unanimously. So it's more, I think, when it's bad governance and when people are apathetic to what's going on and it's hopeless, I think that is what causes more of a less of a voter turnout. But when you are happy about how things are going, you're happy that Tennessee's a red state, and you're happy with the governance, you do have more of a turnout. So I don't know if it's apathy with party, but it might be apathy in results. I think that's a big part of yours.
Yeah, that could be. And let me go on. Pete brings up a point. He says, which party gave us the war on drugs? Which party gave us qualified immunity? Which party gave us forced lockdowns and forced business closures? Answer: the government party, a joint venture of Republicans and Democrats. To design this system, they are 100% responsible. I feel like, I've been watching some Democratic pundits, and what they said is one of the reasons why there wasn't a massive change was many people looked and saw almost no difference in the parties. I'm not sure that's true, but I get there are some people who would think that I do. But I think there's something else, though, and that is people are screaming for another alternative, right? And I think the reason is I'll go back to it again. I didn't feel there was any positive message this year, right? There wasn't a hope and change like Obama or a MAGA like Trump. There was no hope. There was no, okay, here's how it was. Look, these other guys are terrible. Oh my God, they're bad. But there wasn't the positiveness. And I feel like that's another piece where people say, it doesn't matter who I vote for, to Pete's point. I'm going to get garbage either way. No one has an answer for me. So at least in New York, I'm not going to bother showing up. I'm just going to go to work that day. Why bother showing up?
Sure. And the GOP and the Democrat Party both have a problem in those regards, right? Like the more progressives want to see more Democrat policy be passed that is progressive, right? I mean, with healthcare, with the legalization of marijuana, with codifying abortion, whatever you want to talk about, there are progressives that are very disappointed with the Democratic Party.
Yes.
In the same way as that, libertarian-leaning populists, I don't know if that's a cuss word on your show for a lot of your people, but I consider myself a paleo-libertarian populist. I hate the way my party is right now. We just elected Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell, the leaders in both of the houses of Congress, one a minority and one a majority, and we hate that. I'm an anti-establishment Republican. I am anti-war. I'm anti-drug war. I have a lot of libertarian leading ideas when it comes to my ideal formation of the party. And it feels a lot of the time like I'm in the majority, but when I see the results, I'm in the minority. And it's a very strange feeling. So I understand that regard. I think there is a sense of anti-establishment that is in all of us, whether you're a third party or whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. When you're from the outside looking in, you are an anti-establishment. And I think we want to see so many changes in our party. But again, I understand what he's saying. But I think the GOP has taken a lot of leaps, and I know I know this is people are going to roll their eyes. But example, the AUMF repeal. Okay, so if you look at 2001 when AUMF got passed, and this is to basically have unauthorized and unchecked use of military force when it comes to Congress, right? You had that yet unanimously.
I like how you add the unchecked part into that.
Exactly, and because a lot of people are like, hey, BS, right? So we're looking at the AUMF being passed. You didn't see one Republican. I think there may have been one Republican. I think Ron Paul may have been the sole Republican that voted against the AUMF in 2002. Then you look at 2021, I believe, the 2021 repeal. You had the majority of Democrats vote for it, and then you had 51 Republicans vote for it. Now, I know that 51 of 435 does not look great, right? Like the numbers don't match up. It's like, well, only that many Republicans. But then look at the jump from 1 to 51. That's a net gain of 50 seats in Congress that voted to Republicans that voted to repeal the AUMF. And I think that's a large leap. You had Matt Gaetz, who and
No,
Nancy
I
Mace,
agree. I mean,
who
if you
are
look
sponsoring
at
Yeah.
you look at 20 years ago,
Mhm.
no one would have thought Republicans would be the anti-war party.
Exactly. Yep.
Everyone would be like, no, Republicans is George Bush. They're the war
Yeah,
party. They're the bomb
exactly.
everybody party.
Right.
But that's simply not the case now. Republicans are not a war party anymore.
Mhm.
That doesn't exist. And it's funny, if you go back further, like 40, 50 years ago, no one would have thought Democrats would have been the war party.
Yeah.
They were singing free love and no more Vietnam. And now they're like, bomb everybody. Right now, they're like, bomb everybody. So yeah, there's definitely been changes over the couple of years, but I see your point. In the past 20 years, Republicans have definitely been that party that has been much less on the war. Dan says Republicans always I think he means suck at messaging. That's their weakest point. They only win when Democrats really screw up. Well,
fair.
I'm going to push a little further on that. The libertarian wing of the Republican Party is even worse because it comes across as selfish.
Sure.
Right? It comes across, and libertarians, some of our anarchists and some of our ANCAPs come across the same way. The feeling they give out is selfishness, even though I don't believe they are selfish, but the feeling comes out that way. And when many Democrats, not as much now because they've been Democrats recently, last year or two, 3 years maybe, they've been much more alienating in their language. But if you go before 2020, Democratic rhetoric was amazing. It was all this for all. We love you. Everybody get it. We love everybody and give everybody money. Like it was so nice and so warm and fuzzy. And as long as you don't think about the policy, actually, as long as you just stay on the surface, I mean, it feels good. Oh my God, they're going to give everybody stuff. Isn't that great? Right. And the Republican side often sounds like, oh, just bootstraps, right? It sounds mean. Yep. Mm-hmm. And I think Dan has a point. When it comes to rhetoric, with the exception of recently, Democratic rhetoric has become very alienating. But prior to that Democratic rhetoric has been much better.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that the Republicans often don't capitalize on what individualism is supposed to mean, right? Like the individualist is supposed to separate themselves from federal government control and make your own decisions. And I think Republicans oftentimes have to debate in their minds, well, we want somebody to be individualist, but not when it comes to things like abortion and, a majority of other issues, whatever you want to talk about, or drugs or, alcohol, whatever you want to talk about. So I think you have to sort of capitalize on messages and issues that people are worried about being individualists on, right? When it comes to guns, when it comes especially off mandates, right? Like arguably the most fascist movement, the most fascist brainwashing that this country has ever seen. The fact that Republicans could not take that and run with it's one of the biggest failures in the history of the grand old party. The fact that we cannot capitalize on lockdowns, schools shutting down, children en masse. I mean, the fact that we cannot capitalize on that's one of the biggest failures because we do suck at messaging. I think oftentimes voters look at the GOP as bankers, like, well, we trust them with our money, right? We don't trust them with any other portion of our life. But we trust them with our money, which is why you see Republicans rebound when their economy's bad under a Democrat. But then you look at any other issue with abortion, with health care, anything else, we're like, well, the Democrats want to at least take care of us, and the Republicans are just going to leave us out in the cold and the rain when it comes to this kind of stuff. So, yeah, the GOP has always sucked at messaging. And unless we have a big-time self-reflection, which I am begging for, you got to meet people where they're at, right? You got to know what kind of concerns. I mean, I think that's where populism does do a good job, is that running on issues that people care about. And if you're not even running and kind of formulating your policies based upon what people care about, give them conservative solutions, right? Like you just said, we're all voting against the opposite side. Right. I think that like when it comes to Democrat Republicans, they're evil, we're not, they're evil, we're not. Populism to me, and at least what the new wing of the Republican Party where you've seen this shift, is saying, okay, what's an issue that you care about? Is it individualism? Okay, well, we're doing this, and this for individualism. If that's what they care about, then find them conservative and Republican solutions instead of just trying to outrage and saying, well, I know you believe this, but we believe this, and you're going to have to vote for us anyway. Don't do that. Try and find actual solutions to what people are concerned about, because I guarantee if you look at any single issue, unless it's just a leftist talking point, if you look at any swing voter, you can find something the Republicans do and Republicans campaign on that's going to be at least able to have some sort of solvency into what people are concerned about. So I just wish Republicans would just realize, does populism suck all the time? Yeah. But we can at least use the tools of populism in order to know what we can get people to care about and how they can come over to the Republican side without alienating them in the first place.
Well, then the other piece is you want to find you want to find a, it's going to sound dumb, but you want to find a slogan.
Yes.
Right? You want to find a slogan that moves people, right? Because I'm not going to pay attention and listen to your policy unless I first hear something cool.
Right.
Like if I hear hope and change, I go, oh, well, that feels good. Okay, what's he talking about? Right? Oh, okay, he's talking about some stuff I like. Great. But if I don't first hear the hope and change, I go, whatever, another politician. Another guy spewing stuff that he's going to lie to me to like the rest of them. I think that's another issue. So, but Joel and Donna both have two different points. Donna says abortion lost it for them. I'm conservative, but still pro-choice. And then Joel goes on to say they heard misinformation about abortion from politicians. I think both of those are true. And I think they compound, because this goes back to Daniel's earlier point. Many people heard, oh, Republicans just outlawed abortion. Mm-hmm. And when they heard that, the Republicans then, to Dan's point, didn't message well at all to counter that at all. They just, they went off and had parties, and they didn't message it at all.
Right.
And then when Democrats gave misinformation, as Joel says, then Donna's like, yeah, it's over. It's done. I think that all goes together into one thing of messaging. Am I off on this?
No, you're not off at all. I mean, ask, I forget I'm going to butcher her last name. Abigail Spangler, I think is her name, in Virginia.
Oh,
she was running against Leslie Vega, and Nick Freitas, who's a Liberty Republican, was running against her in 2020, which is why I'm familiar with her. But Democrats dealt with the same issue in 2020. Right. 2020, defund the police was the number one most Republican used attack on Democrats. And it really did affect a lot of swing districts because they didn't have an answer. Republicans didn't have an answer for abortion this time in swing districts. So I think that's very much true. I'm not on here to say, I'm not advocating anywhere that abortion had no impact. It absolutely had an impact. Did we solely lose on it? Like, was that the number one issue? No, I think it was a combination of a lot of factors. Like I said, Trump not being on the ballot when his candidates are, abortion itself, messaging is a problem, not capitalizing on mandates and lockdowns. There's a collection of portfolio of problems the GOP had, but I don't know if abortion is the number one. I don't know if we solely lost on it. Did we lose on it? Yes. Did we solely lose on it? I don't think so.
Okay. So what about the future now? Does the Republican Party, does it have that after action report that you would like so much, right? Does it have that sit down and go, okay, what do we do wrong? What do we do right? Blah, blah, let's do that. Or does it just go, all right, guys, business as usual. Let's hope Trump saves us, or let's hope Trump quits, or whatever is the idea they have for the party, whether Trump is good or bad for them?
I think it's a combination of the two. Unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever people want to think. I think a lot of Republicans would say, unfortunately, at least a lot of them on Twitter would. I'm kind of up in the air about it. I think that there's a debate between Trump and DeSantis right now, right? Like there's the 2024 nomination. To me, I think that's the least of our worries. And I know that sounds strange, but I think Trump and DeSantis.
You're an opposite again. You look at you, rebel.
Yeah. I go contrarian a lot of this stuff, but I think there's just a lot more important battles. I think the RNC is an important battle. I think Congress. I think the Senate. Joe Manchin has a Republican opponent already for 2024. I'm looking ahead to the future because I think regardless of who we nominate in 2024, they're going to be the same attacks. Is Trump a little bit more polarizing? Yeah, but DeSantis has been the number one target of the left for what, 2 or 3 years now. The guy, Def Santis, like he's automatically going to be the savior that independents are going to flock to. I don't know if that's true. I love DeSantis. I've met DeSantis, and he's my favorite governor in the country and one of my favorite politicians for
Do you think he runs? What's your gut tell you? Your gut say
my gut says
no.
he will. My gut says he
Really?
will, and my gut. I wish my gut was wrong because I think it splits the party because people care too much about presidential nominees. I think the battles are won in the Senate, in the trenches, in the House, in the state legislative races, in the gubernatorial races.
So in your perfect world for the GOP, you think DeSantis should finish out his term as governor, and Trump should run? Do you think there should be a big field of people against Trump like last time, or should this kind of be more like a coronation? Just let Trump run, just let him run.
I think some
In
competition.
your perfect world.
Yeah. Okay. So in my perfect world, if I had a slate of candidates, okay. So for one, I wish DeSantis wouldn't. My own personal opinion, because I don't want him damaging the primaries. Look at any presidential candidate for 2016. Trump's going to run away with it. In my own opinion, polls can say what they want to say. He's a personality. When he gets on that debate stage, going to destroy whoever's in his path. Just my own personal opinion. I was a collegiate debater. That's just what happens in public perception. So I wish DeSantis wouldn't run, number one. Number two, I wish that these candidates would run. Larry Hogan, Nikki Haley, Mike Pence, Chris Christie. Put those four candidates on stage of Trump. Let's get rid of the neocon establishment candidates that are running for the nomination. Nikki, like I said, Haley, Hogan, those candidates, get rid of those. Let's get down that slate. Let Trump do whatever he does in the general election. I can't sit here and make a 2024 prediction. I think that Biden will struggle. In my own opinion, his approval rating hasn't been over 41 for 8 or 9 months or more. And I think with him being back on social media, him being back in the public spotlight, and with us looking at the economy, with the worker strike, the railroad strikes that's going to happen, with the pipeline, all these Afghanistan failure, whatever, have all these issues combined with a bad presidential candidate in 2024. Let Trump have his chances, and let's not split the party, and let's get rid of the old wing. My ideal nomination would be Trump 2024. Let him run against the establishment, neocon, horrible Republicans that the MAGA movement, the Libertarian movement, has tried to get out of the Republican Party. Finally be done away with those kind of candidates. Then let 2028 come around. If Trump wins or if he loses, then have a new dog. Have DeSantis. Have somebody like DeSantis, Glenn Youngkin, or any of these other sort of high-profile candidates to really battle for the soul of the party after Trump. But I think if Trump is going to run, he's already announced that he is running. Let's capitalize on what he does best. And that's destroying the establishment. If we're going to run all these horrible Republicans for president anyway, because Haley and them would have ran against DeSantis or whoever the nominee would be, let's run them anyway, get them out of our party, and then let DeSantis take over in 2028. That's my ideal scenario. I'm not sure if that's going to be what happens. I doubt that's what happens, actually. But that would be I'm going to give you my pick. I'm going to give you my pick already. I think neither Trump nor Biden are on the major party tickets in 2024. Both.
I think neither of them. I think both parties, I think in the long run, will pick somebody else. And when the time comes, 2024 November, it will not be a Biden-Trump thing. That's my gut. I mean,
pick.
I think that because I feel like, and it's going to sound the worst reason. I feel like Democrats don't really like Biden.
Right.
They don't hate him, right? Biden's not easy to like or hate. Mm-hmm. He's easy to feel for, right? To feel bad for him. He is. I'm just, seriously, he's easier to feel. Oh, right. That's easier for that.
Bless his heart.
Not as, yes, it's exactly right. Yes. You can hate him and love him. You can. It's just harder.
Right.
People like Trump, big personalities, very easy to love, very easy to hate.
Absolutely.
Right. Very easy to have strong emotion either way towards Trump. Not so much for Biden. Mm-hmm. So I feel like the Democrats are going to be like, we got to find somebody else. I think they're going to look for Obama 2.0.
Sure.
I don't know who that is.
Gavin Newsom,
maybe he's white Obama. Maybe he is. I don't know. Sure. Maybe he is. Right. But you got to find somebody. I don't know who that. But they're looking for that. I think they are. And right. I think the Republicans are, to your point, too fractured. And I think that Trump's not going to make the my gut is he doesn't make the full slate. He doesn't finish even the primaries.
Wow,
that's my gut.
You're going contrarian, like I've been on a lot of my takes during the show.
I am. There we go. That's what I'm saying. Absolutely, yes, absolutely. So, all right. The Scientific Libertarian says my hope is Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, and Rand Paul, so Rand can have a chance for once. You know what? I agree with this one. This is a good one. I'm with you. See this. I liked it. If the Republicans have these three, a good deal.
Right.
because then Rand Paul is up there.
Yeah, maybe,
So-
maybe that's what's called the Bill Lee effect in Tennessee. I remember in 2018, Bill Lee, who's our incumbent governor, was running against Randy Boyd, who was a billionaire, and then Diane Black and Beth Harwell, who were sort of establishment Tennessee politicians. And the dude had not hardly ran any campaign ads, but Boyd and Black were attacking each other so much in attack ads that Lee prospered to the top because he had a positive message and ended up getting the gubernatorial nomination. So, I mean, that could very well happen. I love Rand Paul, and I would support him over any Republican on any ticket. So, if those are the three slates, I'd absolutely support Rand.
We're all winning. We all agree. No contrarian here. We all agree on this one. That's good.
Exactly.
So Nate says, with New York being a battleground state, I wonder what is his opinion on the idea that New York will go gold before it goes red. And is it worth supporting third-party ballot access? Hasn't the two parties become too divisive? Are third parties the answer in these battleground states? And I think what it means for two reasons. One, look at Utah, right? Now, I know Mike Lee. I happen to like Mike Lee. I'm glad he didn't lose. However, as you know, last time he ran, he won by 40 points.
Mm-hmm.
McMullen gave him a run for his money,
right?
And there was a time when people were scared, like, my God, Lee might lose this damn thing. It was scary for a bit for Lee. And the reason is because the Democrats, didn't run a candidate.
Right.
They just supported an independent to do that. We were considering the same thing here in New York. For me to be supported by the Republican Party, them not to run somebody, and to support me and run as a third party and have a chance to and Utah's worse than New York. Utah's 4-1 Republican and Democrat. New York State is only 3-1, but it's Democrat to Republican. So the thought process was do it that way. Do you have a feeling either way?
I mean, I've definitely supported libertarians and like that in the past. I mean, in 2018 or 2020, I actually forget the year, when Gary Johnson was running for New Mexico Senate, right, against Martin Heinrich. I went on Twitter and I said the Republican needs to drop out and they need to support Gary Johnson because he's a popular candidate. He's a libertarian guy there. He's Republican. Let's get behind him because the Republican doesn't have a chance anyway if Gary Johnson does run, and he's at least a libertarian Republican enough for me. So let's do it. I think you have to, again, the quote that I always bring up is you have to know the battles you're going to win. I don't enjoy a lot of sort of running against Rand Paul, running against Thomas Massey as a third party libertarian. I don't see the point, and that's just an example. People who are actually fighting for liberty, Mike Lee, like if a libertarian is running against Mike Lee in the U.S. Senate, I think Lee and Rand Paul are two of the most libertarian you can actually get in the U.S. Senate when it comes to small government and constitutionalism. But I don't mind at all running libertarians and Republicans and libertarians having sort of a unity coalition when it comes to going against Democratic tyranny. And Larry, if that would have happened and you would have had that chance, I would have jumped in and say, hey, let's absolutely do this. But again, it's just about, I think it's very specific instances. And I think some of those are rare. I think that, for example, like with Hazel in Georgia, I think that was a good thing because, and I don't know about Daniel, but I forget his first name. But Shane Hazel in Georgia, when he's holding Governor Kemp and Stacey Abrams accountable, but Kemp's going to win anyway. You're not going to be putting a leftist progressive in there in the governor's office. That's a good thing because Hazel's saying, Kemp, you're pretty good on a lot of things, but you're pretty bad on some things too, especially during the mandates. And Stacey Abrams, you're all around horrible. But then you have the Senate race where Daniel's kind of maybe the deciding voter could get somebody to a runoff or not, be it for the Democrat or the Republican. That sort of has more of an impact, but is it necessarily? You mean
Chase Oliver?
Chase Oliver. Yes, I'm sorry. That's his name. I was getting confused. That's a little bit more of an issue for me. When somebody can hold somebody accountable and make the Republican more Republican, good thing. When you have a candidate like Gary Johnson or a potential Larry Sharp libertarian or Republican coalition candidate like yourself in New York, I think those battles are worth it. But in races that may hand the progressive the win, or maybe you're running as a libertarian against a libertarian Republican, which makes no sense, that's where I kind of go, all right, hold on a minute. Let's kind of think a little bit more strategically on what's best for liberty here.
What about the idea that if you have a libertarian in the race, in the case of Chase Oliver or Shane Hazel, whichever case, that should, in theory, I don't know if it does, but it should, in theory, bring people more towards the libertarian, right? Shouldn't right now, look, I don't know if that's happening, but
Sure.
I'm assuming that they would at least be thinking about, shouldn't, Herschel Walker and Warnock be thinking, all right, how do I get Chase Oliver's people? Or
Yep.
are they instead thinking, no, I need to get more of my people out. Who cares about Chase Oliver? And I don't know the answer to that question, right? And as a strategist, what do? Do you tell Warnock, forget Oliver, let's just get more Democrats out than Republicans? Who
No.
cares? Or do you go, no, let's talk to Oliver and see what we can do? If you're Walker, what do you do?
You talk to Oliver's people in that
You do.
same regard. I mean, I would. I mean, I know there's, and this is going to be controversial. I know there's a lot of libertarian people who are very pissed off about what happened in Arizona with Mark Victor and Blake Masters. But the reason that happened was because Masters was trying to actually talk to Oliver's people. He was going on libertarian podcasts. He went on the Ron Paul show to appeal to libertarians. That should be what we are doing. We shouldn't be denying and saying libertarians are foolish. They're just a spoiler, whatever. We shouldn't be doing that. We should be talking to libertarians that are like, all right, I know you're running for either ballot access or you're running to promote the Libertarian Party, but how can I help? How can I appeal to your people? Look what Marjorie Taylor Greene did for Shane Hazel. I mean, when people were complaining about Shane Hazel in 2020, I admit it, I was myself because I was mad. But Marjorie Taylor Greene was offering an olive branch out to say, hey, let's not get mad at Hazel. I don't know if I agree with what he did and running and, talking all kinds of trash about the incumbents or whatever. But he should create a conversation of how if we're not doing well enough and anti-government enough to get these LP voters to vote for us, then we're doing something wrong. And I think that is a very good self-reflection. Say, why are these people voting for third parties? Because these people don't like government, right? Like, right. These people, they should be voting for us if they don't like government. Okay, so let's appeal to Libertarian Party voters. Now, again, I think there's a fine line between running somebody against somebody who is libertarian. Now, David Perdue, no. Brian Kemp, no. Herschel Walker, Raphael Warnock, they're not libertarians. But somebody like Rand Paul, Thomas Massey, I don't know if that's really as the battle you probably should be fighting. But I think
let me defend the party, the LP, for a moment. The problem that I have with Mark Victor is not him dropping out and hanging out with Masters in any way. I don't know Masters very well before with you, so maybe he's a great libertarian. My problem is twofold. If you already knew he was a good guy and you liked him, why'd you run?
Sure.
Don't run. Just don't run. And then libertarians will probably pick him over the Democrat, generally speaking. If he's that good of a libertarian, you get your votes anyway, right? But the second you run, what people don't realize is that most libertarians, at least half, but probably most, are not going to do what the candidate says. They're just not, right? I can call myself king of libertarians all day long. I'm not the king. They'll laugh me up the stage. If I want to give myself that title, I can, but I'm not the king. Not going to work. And Victor didn't have enough power to get people to not vote for him. Right. So he still got 2% of the vote anyway.
Exactly.
So just don't run is option one.
Definitely.
Option two, let's say you are running and you realize, man, this other guy he's way better than me. He's better chance of winning. He's a Liberty guy. Then just drop out.
Yep. Agreed.
But once you do the cross endorsement, two things happen. Number one, libertarians who supported you are now mad at you, and they're going to vote against your guy because you dropped out and endorsed him. And that's what happened. And that's what I told people. So you're not going to get what you want anyway.
Right.
So, but second part, now you've heard everybody else. The second he dropped out, every libertarian candidate who was running got the phone call. Why don't you do what he did? That's the right answer. Do what he did. Sure. So now all of a sudden we're getting trashed on social media. Our fundraising goes down. People don't trust us. It hurts the third party movement. Again, if you think Mass is the right guy, awesome. Don't run. Or if you find out later, just drop out. If he'd have just dropped out and said, I can't do this anymore, whatever, guys, I love you. I don't want to spend any more of your money. I don't want to raise my money. Thank you. Anyway, I'm out. People would have said, oh, damn. Okay. Now who do I vote for? And I would bet most of them would have gone to Masters.
Sure. I agree. And I agree with that. I mean, when I went on Brian, I went on 2 or 3 shows about this, actually. I think the timing was really bad. I think if you were going to endorse, you should do it a week before the general election. Horrible strategy in that regard. I think agreed with you. Here's my only probably tweak is probably wait till see who the Republicans nominate, right? Because
Yeah, sure.
you had Brnovich, you had Masters, you had whatever the other people's names were that were pretty bad, right? Like Brnovich is a neocon establishment Republican, and I kind of want to went, man, we vote for Mark Victor. Who cares? Because Brnovich sucks. But then you have Masters who wins the primary. Victor should have probably done research, at least when he sort of heard in libertarian circles. This guy reads Rothbard, he reads Mises. I mean, kind of look to see who this guy actually is, and then at that point drop out. Don't drop out a week before the primary, and like you said, piss off libertarians. Probably encourage a few libertarians to vote for Mark Kelly out of spot. Probably not a good idea either. So I agree with it in principle myself, and of course I would. I'm a GOP guy, but I just the reasoning after him going on the podcast, I just wish it all would have happened, especially for Masters. I mean, Masters probably could have capitalized off fundraising and probably had a few more, thousands or millions of dollars go his way if he knew that the libertarians could probably get behind him in some sort of fashion. I don't know how much money libertarians have, but they could probably give it a little bit more to put him over the finish line if he was that close and was underfunded anyway. So I absolutely agree with you. I think that it's important in the Mark Victor case to kind of do a little case study. It wasn't good overall, probably for Masters. Probably not overall. 2% voted for Mark Victor anyway. They've either voted for Victor or probably voted for Kelly. I'd say a minute part actually went for Masters, unfortunately. I wish the timing would have been better. I think libertarians, Republicans, it all goes back. Be more strategic with your decisions, please. Just do it what voters want you to do. Don't do it for your own clout or for your own decisions, making it your own stardom. Just do what's right, and that'd be my message in that regard. So I overall agree with you. I love Masters. I like Mark Victor, but the timing definitely could have been better.
Well, there's something else you can do too, is you can actually help out my sponsor, which is the advocates.org, and go to the world's smallest political quiz. So if you're not sure who you should be voting for, you can actually take the world's smallest political quiz. I do my commercial. Give me a second. So you got to do the world's smallest political quiz. It does matter why they sponsor the show. It's literally 2 minutes. I'm not joking. It's 2 minutes. You answer 10 questions, and you get, where are you? Are you more towards conservative? Are you more towards libertarian? Are you more towards progressive? Are you more towards moderate? You might go, Larry, I bet that's a test that skews you towards libertarianism. It doesn't. In reality, most people who take it are actually moderates. That's true. We have the number, not most, sorry, the plurality, not the majority. The plurality are actually moderates. So if you want to do that, you should do that. Support my sponsors, take that test, and then share your results so that you can have conversations all over the place. Not just that, though. If you want to see what Kenny's doing, no worries. Head over to Twitter, KD Cody TN. Check him out, see what he's doing, connect, reach out to him, bug him too. He'll answer. Bug him, do all those things. It's all fine. Just don't insult him. Don't be mean. But anyway, whatever case may be, do that. If you want to support the show itself, you can. Patreon.com/Sharpway. Throw me $10 a month. If you're wealthy and rich, throw me more. Throw me $100 a month because you got all the big dollars, all you rich people. Please do that if you can. Every little bit counts. It helps us tremendously in growing the show and moving forward and making things happen. So let me ask you, is there anything that we should be talking about for the future? Is there a positive outcome of this, either Democratic or Republican or anything else? Is there positiveness, or is this doom and gloom?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, I think doom and gloom for the week or two afterwards, but I mean, in the same way that sports teams deal with a big loss, you've got to pick up your bootstraps and go the next game. I think that it's a good thing in regards to what do we need to do better. It's a self-reflection. We need to capitalize more on reaching out to like you said, reaching out to libertarians, third parties. Look to what issues people care about. Look why people are voting third party. Look why people are voting for Democrats. Look why they voted for us in the first place. Was it just party line? Was it something that we said? Look to where Republicans might have won and capitalize on it. This is basic political strategy. Look to what succeeded and look to what won. Okay, why did 18 to 30-year-olds vote? Why did they come out in droves in this election in comparison to other elections when they hadn't ever turned out in any election ever? For some reason, they did this time. Was that abortion? Is that healthcare? What was it?
Right. So was overall, it the student loan thing?
Right. Was it the student loan forgiveness thing? Do people say, hey, I want to make sure that, it's on pause right now. It's in court. I need to make sure Democrats win so it passes. I mean, what made people come out? And just that self-reflection in the same way in practice in sports. And I get sports analogies, but I think it's a very basic comparison to make. Try and see what works and really try to reflect on what you can do better. I think Republicans, we fail so much that it's like we have a 5-5 record. We're always trying to improve our team, and we're always trying to improve. But I mean, for once, I just wish we could go out and actually change things. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting to get a different result. We really need to change things. I think we need to go anti-establishment. I think that we need to capitalize on the benefits of populism and the MAGA movement. Try and reach out to the libertarians. Try and reach out to the independents and see what we can do, what campaign issues we can put on the forefront in order to appeal to voters and try and capitalize on tyranny. Like try and capitalize on what the Democrats and progressives are doing. Yes, like is it tyrannical? Is it big government? Is it fascist a lot of the time? Yes, let's put that there. Let's put that in voters' minds and then capitalize on what voters care about and why they're voting for us, not why they're voting against Democrats. Should they vote against Democrats for the things they've done, especially with lockdowns and mandates? Yes, but we also have to give them a reason to vote for us. It has to be both.
Yes.
It doesn't need to be one or the other. It has to be both.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I think for the Republicans, my gut is Republicans and Democrats going to have two separate struggles, but they're similar. Separate, but they're similar. And that is civil strife.
Yes.
I think that the Democrats are going to have a problem with the further left part of the party thinking, okay, now we win. And I mean that on a social level, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now we win. But in reality, most Americans who are concerned about democratic issues, they would like a little bit of socialism. They would. I think you'd look at socialism polls relatively high across the country, but established Democrats want to instead. Established Democrats are wealthy too, so they don't want to do any of that. They just want to give away a little bit of. Well, we'll change our pronouns. We'll put pronouns in our bios. Can we do that instead? And can we keep all our money and keep trading? Can we still keep doing our stock trading and making millions of dollars?
Ukrainian flag.
We'll put our pronouns in our bio. Is that all right? That's what Democrats are doing right now, right?
Right.
And I think that's going to be part of their civil war. I think the civil war in the Republican Party is going to be your point: the populism of Trump versus more of the establishment of the Mitch McConnells of the world.
Right.
How are those two gonna fix that, whatever the case may be? I think those are the problems for each. But here's, I think, the positive of both. I think for the Republicans, you're going to find more people like DeSantis. I think more are going to come up for the Republicans, more who are still conservative enough for Republicans, but have enough charisma, but aren't, boisterous like Trump.
Yep.
Right. And then still have a track record. I think you're going to find more of those people coming up. I think you have more of those.
Definitely.
The Democrats, if the Democrats are able to get one big thing done, like Obamacare or something, they're going to do very well. If they're able to get a Medicare for all, which, by the way, I'm 100% against. But I'm just telling you, that's what I'm trying to do, right? A Medicare for all or something like that. If they can get some big thing like that, student debt loan forgiven or something like that, right? Any of those big deals, and they have a shot coming up here making that happen.
Definitely.
Right? Within 2 to 4 years, they can make that happen. If the Democrats get a big thing over, they will unite the Democrats if they can do that. It'll crush Medicare for all is devastating the country, but it will absolutely unite the Democrats.
Definitely.
That's what I think for positive and negative.
You definitely, you have to prevent that. I think that's why, I know a lot of people are kind of sulking right now and putting salt and licking our wounds, right? But that's why getting the House was so important. Like, regardless if it's by 9 or by 100, I'm just glad we got it because we can hopefully prevent a lot of that stuff from happening, hopefully. And if we can get enough momentum going towards 2024, with a lot of these seats coming up, with Joe Manchin's seat coming up, with Sinema's seat coming up to take back the Senate, we can absolutely block that from happening. So I think that was why it was so vital for us to get the House no matter what. And that's at least an optimistic point. As bad as it was, we still succeeded in one majority to hopefully block a lot of legislation. And there's nothing more that I like than blocking legislation a lot of the time, especially under a Democratic tyrant. So I think that what you're saying is correct. I think that Republicans have got to. I also think Republicans have to find their issue. Abortion has happened, right? Like Roe v. Wade has been overturned. That's been a Republican priority for a long time in terms of giving rights back to the states on the issue. But now that's done and over with. Like we no longer a lot of the time can capitalize on abortion, in my own opinion, unless it's statewide stuff or a gubernatorial race or a state legislative race or what have you. Republicans a lot of the time now can't capitalize going and they want to kill babies and they're pro-choice and they want to make sure that people can terminate their birth up till birth or whatever.
I'll tell you what I think that the Republicans should be doing right now. A national should be peace and prosperity.
Absolutely.
That's to me that if I'm Republican, and I'm not, but if I was, I'd be saying, guys, we're going to be the peace party and bring all the jobs home.
Absolutely.
Peace party, all the jobs home.
Absolutely.
Peace, prosperity. That's our party. Peace and
Yes.
prosperity.
Yeah.
I think that message, in my view, would make a lot of people go, all right, oh, I like that, right? So
Yeah.
you're not going to send my son to die in some needless war, and you can bring more jobs back.
Right.
I'm in. I
be,
like
be
that
the
deal.
anti-war and be the free speech party. We are the liberals of the 70s. Like, just
Yes.
if we're for promoting free speech on social media, for everything else, just like you said, be peace and prosperity and free speech. Sound like 70s hippies, and let's win this thing. And that's what I am, really. I mean, a lot of Republicans, a lot of populist, and ironically enough, MAGA Trump Republicans, all we are just like live and let live free or die. Like, that's all that we are. So let's capitalize on that, because it's a winning message. It's why there's been movies made about hippies. Like, try and capitalize on this message. Let us enjoy our music. Let us enjoy our families. Don't let people go into our schools and keep the government out of our lives. That is, like I said, the Woodstock hippies of the 70s and the 80s. Let's capitalize on it. Let's become the party of it, and let's move on, and let's win. That'd be a very simple message.
I like it. So, Kenny, before we wrap this up, anything else we should be talking about? Did I miss anything?
Not really. I think that we just kind of have to wait and see how a lot of these statewide elections go. I mean, there's several county races and some state races going on next year. I know 2023 is not on a lot of people's radar, but remember, the Glenn Youngkin Virginia win happened in the odd year of 2021. So be on the lookout for some of those races. Look how Republicans respond when they get majority. Hold them accountable. There's nothing better that I like than calling out Rhino, big spending Republicans. So I'm looking to call plenty of Republicans out, not just I'm arguably more of a Republican critic than I am a Democrat critic, ironically enough. So looking to hold those people accountable, make sure that we actually have an impact in Congress on a personal level. Hopefully, I've got a piece coming out Wednesday on Lee Zeldin, actually. So be on the lookout on that for a Washington Examiner, and just keep fighting the good fight. I ask everyone, no matter if you're in the Libertarian Party, Republican Party, and a very less likelihood the Democrat Party, keep on fighting for liberty and anti-tyranny. That's my only message.
There we go. I love it. Thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Larry. Anytime, brother. Thank you so much for having me on.
Guys, I want to say thank you all for watching. Thank you all for your chat back and forth. I appreciate it tremendously. You know, I love you guys doing it. Please support the channel to the best of your ability. I will be on tomorrow on A Free Solution out of Western New York at 1 p.m. and also a show tomorrow at 7 p.m. Actually, a Democratic candidate for Senate out of Georgia will be actually talking to us tomorrow. I will see you all